Royals, how are you? I sincerely hope that everyone is doing well. I pray that this year 2021 will be so much better for all of us. And today I will do a review of what I can say one of 2020's good points. So undoubtedly one of the most important watches of the last century, one of the most iconic sports watches ever, a watch that has transcended its diving instrument functionality and is now regarded as a design and status symbol recognized by most. 2020 ushered in a new sub, and the evolution was subtle. Today we take a look at the 2020 Rolex Submariner 41mm No Date 124060. Last year was the year of the Submariner for Rolex, and it was a special one indeed. When updating one of its models, the crown tends to move gradually. First, it introduces a precious metal version, followed by a two-tone model, and finally the steel version. But in 2020, Rolex has renewed the entire Submariner collection with the No Date Submariner 124060 and also an array of Submariner Date with new colored bezels and multiple materials. But let's focus on the main highlight. This classic No Date Submariner 124060 steel with black dial and bezel, the successor of 114060. If you look at the watch, you would say that there's very subtle update. However, most of the components of the Rolex Submariner 41mm reference 124060 are new. Born sometime in 1953 or 54, the Rolex Submariner started life as a true diver's instrument, a watch created with professionals in mind. Although the evolutions are certainly important, the base concept of the Submariner remained the same, and the design codes were always respected. An early Submariner and a late generation model share multiple common traits, which went a long way in reinforcing the popularity of this watch. Today, the Rolex Submariner is more than just a dive watch. It is a cult object, an icon of design, a watch that transcends the community of collectors. It is, without a doubt, one of the most famous watches ever created, and its diving capacities, even though uncompromised, have become somehow less relevant in the present context. Last year, the update is subtle and restrained. At first, you'll hardly spot the differences between the new 124060 and the older 114060. The new model is more of an evolution than a revolution. However, almost everything in the latest generation has been remodeled, redesigned, updated, or changed. First is the case of the Rolex Submariner 41mm. As indicated in the name of the watch, the major update regarding the case concerns the diameter. For several decades, the sub has measured 40mm across, yet a large number of customers were asking for an increased diameter. And this year, their requests have been met with the 124060 and its 41mm diameter. Beyond the increased size of the watch, there are many new things to see in the case of this new Submariner 41mm, most of them concerning shapes and proportions. One of the most characteristic features of the previous generation of Submariner was its so-called super case, with a squarish overall shape due to the large robust lugs that almost follow the line of the case bands. In the same vein, as multiple other updated Rolex watches, including the 43mm Sea Dweller, the super case is gone and the new 124060 features more tapered lugs which are thinner and more angled. The second evolution regarding the proportions concerns the lug width, which has been increased from 20mm in the past to 21mm on the Submariner 124060. Finally, to give more consistency to the design, the crown guards have also been redesigned and are now more angled than in the past. The new Rolex Submariner 41mm actually feels slightly more compact on the wrist than its predecessor. The extra 1mm in diameter is almost imperceptible, and the overall design has a bit more elegance, I must say. The case of the 2020 Submariner is made from oyster steel, the internal name for the 904L stainless steel. It is finished mostly with brushed surfaces, while the sides are polished. The crown is a triplock, and the case back is solid steel and screwed. On top sits a flat sapphire crystal which doesn't feature anti-reflective coating, which is the norm for Rolex. And being flat, this isn't too distracting. The case is as usual water resistant to 300 meters or 1000 feet, and the execution, assembly, and finishing are on par with all Rolex models. which is of course simply excellent. Now let's go to the dial and the bezel. Let's get straight to the point. This is where the Rolex Oyster Perpetual doesn't evolve. Dial and bezel are almost identical to the previous ceramic generation, as you can see. Sorry for those expecting a red depth rate or some evolutions, this isn't happening. Previous generation of Rolex Submariners was already fully equipped with the brand's latest technologies and materials, including the glossy lacquer dial, the white gold applied indexes and hands, as well as the ceramic bezel. All of these elements are reincorporated on the Submariner 41mm 1240-60. Starting with the bezel, we have now a slightly larger diameter to be consistent with the increased diameter. The unidirectional bezel is made of stainless steel with a knurled edge. The insert is made of black Cerachrome. The surface is polished and reflective, yet also scratch resistant. The 60-minute scale remains the same as previous models, with a combination of buttons and numerals for the temp, as well as precise graduation for the first 15 minutes, which is very crucial when diving. The graduations are obtained by platinum PVD coating, giving the numerals and scale a luxurious appearance. The same process was already used on the past models. The bezel's rotation operates with 120 clicks and feels, as expected, extremely precise and smooth at the same time. It oozes quality and robustness. A luminous pearl circled with 18K white gold is present at 12 o'clock. The dial of the Submariner 41mm 1240-60 witnesses no major evolution either. It retains the iconic combination of triangular, rectangular, and circular markers, which greatly assists consulting the time in the dark. In the same vein, we find the Mercedes hour hand and the straight minute hand with a pointy tip. One thing to note is that hands have been slightly reworked. The minute hand is no longer. It now touches the minute track and has a wider luminescent insert. The Mercedes hour hand is also slightly wider than in the past. The second hand retains its lollipop feature with a luminous dot, of course. All the elements are executed in polished 18K white gold and generously filled with chromalite, which is Rolex's own luminous blue glowing luminescent material. The markers and hands are certainly as large as in the past, meaning that the maxi dial layout has been retained. However, due to the extra 1mm, the dial feels a bit more open. The Crown Rolex logo and Oyster Perpetual mentions remain printed in white at 12 o'clock, as you can see, while the 4 lines of text of the previous version have been kept at 6 o'clock, which is the Submariner, 1,000 feet, 300 meters, and blah blah. The main evolution, which was already seen on recently revamped Rolex watches, is the Swiss-made logo with a small crown at 6 o'clock. While completely in line with past models, the dial and bezel of the new Submariner 41mm are once again a demonstration of excellence with precise and refined execution. Some would have preferred a bit of eccentricity, a touch of color, or smaller indexes or hands. However, the keyword here was consistency. Now let's go to the bracelet. This is of course an oyster bracelet and oyster clasp. Once again, very traditional and consensual. The Rolex Submariner 41mm is worn on a typical Rolex oyster bracelet, a solid and perfectly integrated 3-link bracelet made of oyster steel. Being a sports tool watch, it is entirely brushed on its flat surfaces, while the sides are polished, a finishing that is in line with that of the case. The lug width had been increased by 1mm, now at 21mm, meaning that the bracelet has also been redesigned. In fact, its entire profile has grown 1mm from the lugs to the clasps. As such, it retains the balance of older Submariner watches and doesn't feel too tapered at the buckle. Like its predecessor, the Rolex Submariner 41mm is equipped with a solid and practical oyster clasp with security flip lock and the clever Rolex glide lock extension system. The length of the bracelet can be extended by 20mm in increments of 2mm, making it one of the best fine adjustment systems on the market. It doesn't feature the extension blade flip lock, which is reserved to instrument models Sea Dweller and Deep Sea, however. Another main update for the 2020 Submariner 41mm isn't visual but mechanical, which I've already discussed in my previous features of other Rolex watches. Like the Day-Date, Datejust, GMT Master 2, Sea Dweller, Yachtmaster, Deep Sea, the Submariner gets the brand's new generation of movements, replacing its caliber 3130 with the new caliber 3230, a movement that is installed for the first time in a watch. As with other models with this generation of engines, it features a long list of improvements. One is a new type of escapement, the Chronergy escapement, an optimized version of the Swiss lever escapement. The thickness of the pallet stones has been reduced by half, while the contact surfaces of the escape wheel teeth have been doubled. The escapement system is no longer in alignment but slightly offset, thus multiplying the lever effect. The escape wheel has a cutout design to make it lighter and reduce its inertia. The efficiency of the escapement is increased by 15%. It is made of nickel phosphorus and is insensitive to magnetic field. An efficient gear train with optimized geometry and high-performance lubricants. A high-capacity barrel with a longer mainspring without increasing the size of the barrel. A new self-winding module for a far more rapid winding of the new high-capacity mainspring. The rotor is now rotating on ball bearings. The generation of movements has a longer power reserve, which is 70 hours versus the 48 hours, and more stability and resistance in most areas. The blue parachrome hairspring is still present, meaning that it remains paramagnetic and extremely resistant to shocks. Even though not visible, the decoration of the movement has been upgraded too. Finally, the caliber 3230 is a superlative chronometer, meaning that it is chronometer certified by the COSC and also receives an internal certification after casing. The precision is of the order ±2 seconds per day, or more than twice than what is required of an official chronometer. On the wrist, since this is my husband's watch, the increased diameter is almost imperceptible. What changes, however, is the feeling on the wrist and the look of the watch itself. Not massively, but enough to be visible. With more tapered lugs, the case gains in elegance and compactness. With a nicer feeling on the wrist, the watch appears more balanced. As such, it somehow goes back to the beloved look of the 5-digit references such as the 14060, with the addition of modern technical solutions and materials, of course. If you're looking for a larger Rolex diver, you have the option of the Sea Dweller 43mm. Being relatively compact and thin for a dive watch, the case retains its daily wear capacities and can easily become a watch for a business meeting, which is why I really love this watch. The modern Submariner is definitely one of the most versatile models on the market. To me, this is the classic and versatile model of Rolex. For pricing, the Rolex Oyster Perpetual Submariner 41mm no date reference 124060 was priced at 7,700 Swiss francs. So since I'm in the Philippines, that's about 418,000 pesos using the exchange rate for today, January 13. But actually, as usual, it's so hard to find. It's so hard to get a hold of this watch. So now here in the Philippines, this is already selling at a much higher price on the secondary market. So it's always been a great investment watch to me. Rolex watches, the sports model of course, have always been a great investment to me. Personally, I believe better than jewelries. So if you're looking for like a more stable investment which you can use, which you can enjoy, then why not consider investing in luxury watches, and you'll never go wrong with a Rolex sports watch like this Submariner. Of course, this watch comes with an international 5-year guarantee. So there you have it, Royals. Thank you for spending time with me today. Thank you for watching this video. If you like this video, I hope you can consider giving it a thumbs up, and please subscribe to our channel. We will be featuring more watches moving forward, not just Rolex watches, but even other good investment watches. So thank you. Have a great day. Thank you, Royals.